Hello and welcome to the mid-February New Mexico Drought Status Briefing Update. I'm Royce Fontenot. I'm the Senior Service Hydrologist here at the National Weather Service Forecast Office in Albuquerque. We've got a lot to talk about, so let's get going. Taking a look at the summary, even with the recent precipitation we've all been very glad to see over most of the state, this week drought continues to expand in New Mexico. All the states in some category in the drought monitor, now up to 99% of the states either in moderate or severe drought, with about 76% in that severe drought, that D2 category. Extreme drought this week has come into the northern mountains. We'll talk quite a bit about that. Snowpack is still well below normal for all the basins. Time is running out for accumulating significant snow. So looking at the current drought monitor, this is data through the morning of the 13th, so this doesn't account for any precipitation we had on Valentine's Day and moving into the morning of the 15th, the day of this recording, and that was released the morning of the 15th. So your key points here, I think really the number that the two things that need to be hit is 99% of the state is in some sort of drought. Just a little bit of that southern tier there is still in that D0. D3 is now coming to the northern mountains, and we're going to talk about that because I think a lot of folks are somewhat confused that we're looking at extreme drought in winter, and especially we just had a great system come through and give a lot of snow and precipitation, but when we start talking about where things stand normally and climatologically, we're really seeing those impacts. So taking a look at the larger view, kind of that nationwide, not a whole lot of change this week with our surrounding states, a little bit of increase of D2 up in Colorado. That area, particularly the southwest mountains in Colorado, the San Juans on the northern side of the border, did a little bit better in one of these systems earlier through the weekend and earlier this week. So the folks up in Colorado decided to hold back on expanding a drought there. Same thing to our neighbors east and west. Again, it's holding steady, but the trend is certainly continuing to see drought expand. There's our 1 month and 6 month change. 1 week and 6 month change. And you see on the left the graphic, the 1 week, again highlighting what has changed from where we were last week. And really the areas to note is the increase down into that category increase into the southeast and Lee and Eddy counties, and then of course the introduction of D3 drought in the northern mountains. And on the right you can see the 6 month change, which is where we were really. That goes back back into August, where we only were seeing a little bit of drought starting to re-enter the area, but for the most part most of New Mexico was clear. So we can see how quickly things change in 6 months. Again, a quick review of the drought severity classification, and you can find this at the Drought Monitor homepage, which we have linked mentioned later in the talk. Again, now we're starting to see that D3 in bigger area. That's that extreme drought. So we're looking at really climatologically a relatively rare event. And I'll talk more about why D3 was introduced in the northern mountains. So here's our 38% normal. This was as of this morning. This includes the precipitation we've seen through about 5 a.m. or so in the morning. Now, again, I've talked about this in previous, and I want to reemphasize this. So you're seeing a lot of those purples, blues and purples, saying well above normal precipitation. For the majority of New Mexico, January and February tend to be our drier months. This is not a high precipitation time of year. What we do get, and we'll talk about, tends to be in the form of light rain or snow. So we've had some very healthy totals with this system come through, particularly here in the central Rio Grande Valley. So those are showing, compared to what you normally expect for that 30-day period, this is a great system. Again, remember, normally in that 30-day period, you're looking at snow, not rain. So these numbers are a little bit skewed, but I want to call attention to the southeast part of the state, which is no precipitation, bone dry. A large part of the eastern plains is still pretty low. And then you see the upper Rio Grande Valley there, between the San Juan and Tusas Mountains to the west and the Sangres to the east, still extraordinarily dry. So this is a kind of a blip in the larger pattern, and you'll see that as we go into the 60-day, which you're seeing here, and going into the 90-day, those numbers start to drop off. Again, climatologically, a dry time of year for most of New Mexico, so you're seeing out of one event relatively high numbers. And we can take a look at the 90-day. Again, you see that trend going down. Like I said, some locations really got some great precipitation totals through midday here. We've seen in the larger metro area here in the Bernalillo County and surrounding areas, we've seen some 24-hour totals over 1 inch. So very healthy system, certainly something we need. But in the long scheme of things, it's kind of a blip. So this is that standardized precipitation index, and we like this to look at this because this gives a really good long-term view of where are we really standing, comparing apples to apples. So this is data through the morning of the 14th, so missing a lot of this event that just came through here. These lagged by about 1 day. And you can see on the 30-day, again, some of those numbers tend to be closer to 0, that 0 to 1, because, again, it's a drier part of the year. But you can see some stations that I've reported in there did see some a little bit above normal there. But as we go through that 60, 90, and 120 days, that's where you're really starting to see the impact of the drought. Particularly you're looking at the 120-day totals. We're seeing SPI values -2, -3. Those are extraordinarily low values. That's something you climatologically don't see very often. So very, very dry period. And it was about October 10th or so that the precipitation, for the most part, cut off for the state. So key points here again, in that 30 days, those values tend to be a little bit higher than you're seeing in the longer days because of the lack of precipitation. So when we talk about normal, I thought I wanted to talk about this week. What is normal? So this is a graphic here on the left of what normal precipitation for February is. And there's two things I want to point out here. One, you see over particularly the valley locations, the lower elevations relatively, those are fairly low totals. We're talking monthly normals, which you would see on based off of 1981 through 2010, weather data. You're seeing fairly low totals, liquid equivalents of less than ½ an inch over most of the state, unless you're in the mountains, particularly the northern mountains. And climatologically, this is the time of year that the southern end of the Rockies, which is really what the San Juan and Tusis are, and the Sangres, those are southern extensions of the Rocky Mountains, tend to see their precipitation this time of year. They tend to get it as snow. So this sets kind of the basis of what we're talking about here, that yes, we've just gotten some snow here in the northern mountains, but you can see, we're referencing back to that D3 that's been introduced. Normally in February, that's a time you're getting a lot of precipitation. You're looking liquid equivalents in anywhere from 1.5 inches to up to, in some cases, 4 to 5 inches of liquid equivalent of, snow. So again, this is where we're seeing this issue, and this is why the Drought Monitor introduced D3 in the northern mountains. So let's look a little more site-specific here in the Albuquerque Sunport. As of the time of that I'm doing this recording here, midday on the 15th, we've had about between 4 and 5/10 of inch of rainfall here at the Sunport. So where does this put us? Well, as of midnight, the driest water year to date, water year is October 1st through September 30th. Going into this event, we were the driest. The driest now is still 1903 to 1904. The wettest is 1905 and 1906, with almost 6 inches since October 1st. So this graphic, what I want to draw attention to, that brown line through the middle is normal. What we would expect, accumulating that precip through this time of year. The normal right around should be a little bit less than 3 inches today. Right now we're again looking for the water year around 1/2 an inch, not quite. So right now we're at least tied through the 5th driest. Again, these are numbers through midnight on the 14th, so it doesn't include any precipitation today. So as of midnight, that was bumped down to the 2nd with 0.27 inches of rain here at the Sunport. So kind of putting it in scope, yes, we've had a great rain event, but look where we should be relative to that brown line, and that's kind of what I want to bring up here. Let me bring that arrow. There's where we are right now. That number's moved up a little bit, like I said, roughly 1/2 an inch now for the water year, but still that is running, ballpark 2.5 inches below where we should be. So let's talk about Snowpack here. We're going to expand a little further on this. This is the data from the National Resource Conservation Service, folks who operate all these SNOTEL networks and go out and do the snow data at the higher elevations. Let's take a look at, as we normally do, with Colorado first. Rio Grande, this system bumped up quite a bit, 47% of normal right now in snow water equivalent as of this morning, and the San Juan, Animas, Dolores, and San Miguel basins up to about 48%. So this was a healthy system for the Rio Grande, particularly those snow-tail sites on that southwest-facing side. You see so this is a basin-wide average. As you get on the eastern side, that northeastern side into the valley, they did not do as well with this system. But looking south of the border between New Mexico and Colorado and looking at our basins, we've only seen a modest increase with the overnight snow totals. Right now the Rio Chama Basin, which is one we're going to talk about here, is only at 34% of normal. The Pecos has increased only to 10% normal. So when we're looking, and then the Southwest Mountains are still extraordinarily below normal. This system helped, but in relative terms, it was only a little bit of a blip. And let's focus on the Rio Chama. So let's take a look at that. So this is an average graphic. So that brown line, that orangish brown line, is snow water equivalent normal. This is just looking at the snow tail. So those are those automated stations, generally at about 10,000 feet or above. The blue line is where we are as of this morning. So some of the numbers on average as of this morning, we only had about 4.27 inches of snow water equivalent in the basin off those automated sites. Normally, we should be at right about 12.5 inches. So we're about 8.25 inches below normal of where we should be today. So that's kind of the rationale behind the D3, is when we're focusing in on these basins, it's just we're so tremendously behind. And you can see that graph. Already by this point, we should have had 12 inches. We peak out at about 16.7 inches. So we should have already had almost 2/3 of our snow water equivalent by this date. So peak on the Rio Chama actually is a little bit later than the rest of the lower Rio Grande Basin. It peaks out more early April. But you can see we've got a long way to go. And actually running the numbers, so here's the basin at a glance. So again, normally right there at the peak of our snow water equivalent, climatologically, we're at about 16.7 inches. As of February 15th, the normal SWE, what we should normally have now, is about 12.5. Currently on the ground, as of about midnight when this data was put together, about 4.5, 4.25 inches, about 4.27. So that's 8.25 inches below normal. That Rio Chama is about 30-something% of normal. So, climatologically, if we look, normally we'd only accumulate about 4.2 inches more of snow water equivalent through the year, through the rest of the season. So to get to normal, to get to that peak normal of 16.7 inches, from here on out, we need almost 300% of the normal precipitation we would see. That's, again, a very difficult number to get to. And in particular, let's look at one snow tail in particular. This is the Hopewell site, right at about 10,000 feet. And similar graphic to the one I just showed for the whole basin right there. So that that red line is the median snow water equivalent. Again, about the same what we're looking at normal. They're not quite interchangeable, but ballpark. So you can see how well below the median we are. That blue line at the bottom is where we are right now, start of day. So again, it's a tremendous hill to climb. We're well below, and it's getting late in the season. Certainly systems like this help, but it's getting late in the season to be able to start picking up weather systems with a significant amount of accumulating precipitation. So I've included these slides to kind of give some thought, some insights into what the thoughts were behind introducing the D3 in winter in the northern mountains. Particularly, like I said, this is a time of year they normally get a lot of their precipitation. They're just not getting it, and we're starting to catch up. There's signs of a pattern change, but the damage has somewhat already been done. So a lot of, still some time to go. These certainly aren't going to be our final numbers, but we certainly have seen the damage. So taking a look at our 28-day stream flow, this is worsening. You're seeing here again, that's expanding, particularly over the northwest and western part of the state. Those basins are starting to drop below normal. We're finally starting to see a lot of those stations, that great moisture we had from 2017 runoff season and late monsoon starting to wear out. Regulated basins generally are still doing fairly well. Some of the data is a little bit skewed, again, because of the time of year, but the general picture is there. We're really starting to see the impact of the drying trend. Seasonal outlook, this hasn't updated since the last briefing, but I want to keep this in there again for March. These are from our colleagues at the National Air Agency Fire Center in Boise, Idaho. For a lot of New Mexico, March looks to be above normal for significant wildland potential, and April and May, virtually all the state is in that above normal. Now, again, these are not a Weather Service graphic. These are from our colleagues over at the National Interagency Fire Center, but certainly this just kind of puts some perspective on a question we all have, is what the fire season is going to look like. Kind of review again La Niña. That's what's driving the drought right now. La Niña is a condition, again, we see normally below normal temperatures in La Niña through that Niño 3.4 region in the equatorial Pacific. So typically in that graphic on the top right, drier conditions over most of the southwest with the jet stream to the further north. That's just been almost a stereotypical winter here. And what we use to define La Niña is a average 3-month below average deviation of temperature in that 3.4 region of minus 0.5 degrees Celsius. So that line shows you where we are. Currently, the 3-month average, is which we use, is right now holding at about minus 1.0, and that's November, December, and January. That's right at the borderline of a moderate La Niña. So we'll see if that continues to hold for the December, January, and February. The current weekly is about 0.9 degrees Celsius below. There's some signs La Niña is beginning to weaken. The outlooks, which I'm going to go through here shortly, indicate that we'll probably see conditions return to near normal in the equatorial Pacific by spring, and that near normal continue through summer. So what's our outlook here? So for the next 8 to 14 days, again, if you're watching this after, these are updated daily, so please check at the Climate Prediction Center, which is the National Weather Service site, to get the current update. But on the left is the temperature. Most of it's kind of a split regime here. We see a pattern change coming. The models are indicating it, and some other tools that we use to help diagnose that 8 to 14 day are hinting at a pattern change. So, that very Four Corners region, New Mexico, Arizona border, trending to below normal temperatures, near normal here for most of the central part of the state, and above normal there in that 8 to 14 day outlook. Now, precipitation showing that same trend, that with the cooler temperatures, a more active storm track possibly to our west. So near normal for about the most of the western third of the state, a little bit above normal there for right along the Arizona, New Mexico border. But I think highlighting there, because of this expected shift in the storm track, the eastern plains is going back below normal. So that's certainly something to watch out for, and certainly not looking to help drought conditions, particularly with a combination of below normal precipitation, above normal temperatures. That creates some issues for particularly agriculture in the east. So what's our March outlook? This was updated today. So looking overall for March, looking at above normal temperatures. That's kind of been the trend there. Only those northeast corner near what we call equal chances. There's not enough skill in what's telling us to kind of sway it either way. Precipitation, southern 2/3 of the state, likely below normal, with equal chances there on the northern tier. So that's going to be interesting, is going into March with possibly a more active pattern with that equal chances of precipitation in March. There is still the possibility we'll see some accumulating snows that will help our snowpack, reduce a little bit of our fire danger there in that northern mountains. So that D3 that we have in the drought monitor is not set in stone. Certainly if we start seeing some accumulating snow and a little building of the snowpack, that D3 certainly will be looked at in future drought monitor issuance. So March through May outlook, this is no real surprise. Again, our trend is typically warmer and drier, and that's what the outlooks are saying through March through May. So any relief we might get in March, we'll see how that goes season-wide. It looks to be a significant chance of above normal temperatures for the spring and below normal precipitation. Drought Outlook issued also as well this morning, continuing drought throughout the state and likely developing further. That one little section there, southeast of El Paso along the west part of Texas there, is likely to develop further drought as well. So where are we with impacts right now? Currently, we're unaware of any new fire restrictions, County-wise, kind of the only new one there is some New Mexico state parks have started to put individual fire restrictions. So please, if you're going to a New Mexico state park, a U.S. forest, a national park, please check there as you check in or with your local authorities about any fire restrictions. Starting to see a continued agricultural impact starting to appear, mainly livestock. Hearing some reports of winter wheat and dryland crops, particularly in the eastern part of the state, having some impacts. Ski resorts are still having some pretty significant impacts from the low snowpack. At this point, we don't have any known water restrictions due to the current drought. We're monitoring those, and we'll post those in further updates as we get them. But again, please, if you have any questions on restrictions of any sort, contact your local authorities. They're the experts on those. So let's kind of wrap it all up. Even with the recent precipitation, which we've seen this week, and we're very glad to see drought is still expanding, I think kind of the key point here is almost all the states in severe drought. Extreme droughts now in the northern mountains, and I've kind of highlighted that's mainly due to the well below normal snowpack. This is the time of year those areas get their precipitation, not in summer with the monsoon. So that is causing a significant impact. And again, time is running out to get that accumulation. The numbers are that we'd have to see in those mountains to get to near normal are pretty high, but pattern for March possibly might have some more systems in there. So again, we've got some time for accumulation. We're not the D3 up in there is not written in stone. We certainly may see that improve if conditions continue to improve. So some links for more information. Again, there's the U.S. Drought Monitor, the current map, all sorts of resources, archive data. If you want data from the Drought Monitor in GIS format, it's there. There's the 3 forecast offices that serve New Mexico, the Albuquerque office, the El Paso Santa Teresa forecast office, and the Midland Odessa office. The current USGS Streamflow conditions, this is from our colleagues at the New Mexico Water Science Center. The New Mexico Climate Center at New Mexico State University, where the State Climate Office is based out of, a treasure trove of information. Western Regional Climate Center at the Desert Research Institute. Drought.gov, again, a great source of information. If you're particularly looking for fire-related information, the Southwest Coordination Center, the SWIC, located here in Albuquerque, which is a multi-land agency center, primarily for coordinating fire logistics and response. There's their site. Click on weather and then fuels and outlooks. And last but not least, the USDA, the NRCS. We could not do any of this without the NRCS. They are a valuable resource for us. Now, one thing you can do to help is send us drought impacts. We can look at all the weather data we want, but your local impacts are a good check and help us know what's going on out there. Particularly in New Mexico, where we have a lot of rural areas. You know the weather where you are. So some of the impacts we're interested in, particularly I've got those arrows in some of those areas we're looking at, the Southwest Mountains, down in Lee and Eddy County, the southern part of the Pecos, northeast New Mexico, particularly in agriculture out there, and then the Four Corners region. What's going on if you're a farmer? What's going on with your crops and agricultural conditions? Are you having extraordinarily low or high stream flow and pond levels? Those are great assessor sources to check on what we're doing. And then, of course, if you live in a mountain area and you've got low snow conditions, we want to know about it. Again, we can see the numbers, but seeing pictures and some a relative state of how things are a good check for us and the drought authors to know where to draw these lines. So impacts are needed. My contact information is on the next slide, which is right here. So again, if you've got any questions, feedback, or you've got those drought impacts, please shoot me an email with some pictures. Give me a call, leave a voicemail if I'm not in. That helps us draw these lines. Only you know what's going on where you are. So, we can, we're based out here in the Albuquerque metro area. We can, kind of see what's going on here. But if you're out in one of the more rural areas of the state, particularly the ones I highlighted, please send me an email. Give me some information. That really helps us draw and manage those lines, or at least confirm what we already have. So again, please send me feedbacks. I appreciate your attention, and we'll update this probably in about 2 weeks or so, or if we have a significant change in the drought monitor. Thank you.